Hey everyone, my name is Alexa Mason with Grace and Cherish, where we focus on interior design through the lens of hospitality and spiritual formation. I believe that everything about our lives can shout to the glory of God, even our homes, and I would say especially our homes. There are a lot of us who are very interested in interior design, and not just for the sake of trends or trying to impress others, though I know sometimes we get caught up in that too. But my hope is that through the videos I share and looking at interior design through the perspective of hospitality and spiritual formation, we can keep our eyes centered on Christ as we create, because there is nothing wrong with wanting to create beauty. In fact, when we create, we are actually imaging our Creator, and we are communing with Him and living out and just expressing what He has put in us as people who love to make, to create. That is what God does. That is what we do as His children. So I want us to be encouraged in that. And I also want to encourage us to really keep Him at the center of how it is that we are going about and creating the spaces that we live in, whether it's an apartment, a house, whatever it might be. So today's video is going to focus on elements of an interior, specifically one element, and then we'll talk about some of the others in future videos. The element that we're going to focus on today is focal points. We're going to talk about what it means, how it plays into a room, and what you need to look for in it. But then also we'll talk about some of the spiritually formative side of things that I hope can help you as you are creating your space. So let's get to it. First off, what is a focal point? A focal point is what your eye goes to when you first enter a room. I'm going to show you a picture of my current living room. When you see this picture, what do you notice? What would you call the focal point? If you said the fireplace, you're correct. In this case, it's something structural. It is our fireplace. Focal points can be different things, but for this room, it is our fireplace. And you can see that the sofas that are on either side of the room, the chair, the coffee table, even the lamps on the sides, those are all aimed at supporting that fireplace as the focal point. Now I'm going to show you another picture, and this is actually from our house when we used to live in Portland, Oregon. Now, when you look at this living room, what would you call the focal point? If you said the very large window looking out onto the backyard, you're correct. In this case, this home was actually a mid-century modern home, which that style is known for bringing the outdoors in. There's a heavy emphasis on nature in mid-century modern style. The home that we lived in was mid-century modern. In fact, the entire neighborhood was actually pretty much all mid-century modern homes. And so you had these large windows that looked out into the greenery and the lawn. And so that was very important to kind of help you feel a sense of immersion into the outdoors. And that was the focal point in that room. Now let's get back to my current house. I'm going to show you a picture of what I call our homeschool room / study. It's very multi-purpose. When you look at this room, what you see is this huge bay window. And when we first visited this house before we bought it, when I saw that window, I said, whatever we do in this room, everything is going to be centered on this as the focal point. You see this huge window that looks out onto our pond and the rest of our property. You see the beauty of nature. It's just something that draws you. It's comforting. It's peaceful. I knew that I really wanted to make sure that that was the focus of this room. And honestly, when you walk into our house, it's really something that stands out to you right away, because that was the focal point. And so you see these different examples of focal points. Now I want you to look around in your room right now, wherever it is that you are. What's a focal point? Do you see something that stands out as where your eye goes when you first enter that room? Sometimes having someone that's not always in your home come in and kind of tell you what they see can be helpful in identifying a focal point if you're not totally sure. But one of the things that I've noticed for people is that they might enter a room and feel kind of like, I'm not sure, chaotic. And sometimes that's lack of balance or other things that could be creating that. But sometimes it's as simple as you don't have a focal point, or you have too many things that are competing to be the focal point. And so what you want to do is identify, what is that focal point? And if you don't already have something that is an established focal point in your space, then you can consider making one. This is as simple as you could get a piece of art that you really love, and you can have that be what you center and design your room around and have that serve as a focal point. It can be something sculptural, like an actual sculpture. You could use contrast, or the way that you place certain items. And let me go back. When I say use contrast, what I'm talking about is something like black and white. That is contrast, right? When you see something, say it's an all white wall, but then you have a black painting, or think about a museum. It's typically not a museum, like an art museum. It's all white walls. Then you have the different colored art that is on the wall that your eye is drawn towards, right? Because you have this background that's there, but then the color really draws your eye. So think about that. I'm not saying make your house a museum, but what I am saying is that is an example of contrast in ways that you can consider that in your space. You might have green walls. Red is a complementary color to that. Maybe there's a red piece of art or something, whatever that might be. Yellow and purple are complementary colors. You can play with that and see, are there ways that I can use different colors and or different textures to really draw someone's eye? Placement is another thing that you can consider, the way that you place different items on in your space that can really draw their attention to it. That's another way to think about making your own focal point. One of the things that stuck out to me as I was researching about focal points and I, many years ago, was starting to learn more about design was I couldn't help but feel the sense of the Lord impressing on me how focal points in design relating to my spiritual life. And how in a focal point in a room, you design everything around it. It's what your eye goes towards. It's that center that helps you even establish a sense of place in a room. And knowing where the focal point is, it helps you to know where you are. And again, how you design the room. And I couldn't help but equate that to having Jesus as the focal point of my life. Having Jesus be the one that that is the center. And everything else is designed to support that. Everything else is designed to point to that. And at the moment that I start to have too many focal points or not, like I've got too much stuff that I'm focusing on and not keeping him at the center, so kind of like in a room, if you have too many things that could be the focal point and you don't know which one's which, that can also happen in your life. And in spiritually, it can be that way where there's too many things that are competing when really there's only one that is meant to be the focal point. And so that was something that as I now am creating these different focal points in rooms and when I help other people establish them for their own homes, I can't help but think, like in my personal life, but also when I'm sharing with them, this is something that is good for design and good for helping you to set up your house, but it's also something that can serve as a reminder that every time you look at that focal point, that you're not only thinking about that thing, but also him, Jesus, and your relationship with him. And it's helpful for me to be reminded of that and to get back to that place of always ensuring that he is the one that's actually at the center. So I'm going to leave you with that today. Thank you for joining me on this first video. I hope that it was a blessing to you. If so, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to know if there are other things that you're curious about with designing in your room and other ways that I can help you with that. Until next time.